Hello, today I am going to be reviewing the debut album by Icelandic alternative folk band Of Monsters and Men. This album is titled My Head is an Animal. It was released in Iceland in September of 2011 and then was released internationally in the US and everywhere in April of 2012. I believe April 3rd of 2012. With a slight adjusted track list. I believe the song Slow and Steady was not included on the Icelandic version, and then there was another song in its place. I'm not entirely sure about that. But I will be talking about the US edition because that's where I live, obviously. So I discovered them around the time they came out in the US around 2012. I remember Little Talks was, and again, I wish that iTunes did this again, was a free download for the week. And I believe it was like in early 2012, maybe it was like right around New Year's. And so that's how I got invested. Actually, it was just because I thought the cover art looked really interesting. And the first single, Little Talks, is not necessarily emblematic of my genre of music necessarily. It's kind of interesting to me that I gravitated, especially at that time in my life, so strongly to the music. Even though I knew it wasn't my favorite song of all time, I was like, I'm interested in this band. And then lo and behold, they released an album, and I became just so captivated by the offbeat quirkiness of it all. They presented themselves, I think, obviously as a very independent alternative folk band, but I think that their first album is very different from the Of Monsters and Men of today, and that means basically their second album, which I have reviewed on this channel and I gave glowing remarks about, so please check that out. I'll link it in the description. Beneath the Skin and Of My Head is an Animal are very different records, unified by a similar sort of introspection that comes with their lyrics, which are so poetic and so beautiful and so soul-searching. And of course, their iconic back and forth vocal delivery of the two leads. We have Nana Brinda's Hilmarsdóttir. I don't know how to pronounce her name. It's Icelandic, obviously. And we have Raggi, or Ragnar, who is the male vocalist. And they kind of go back and forth with each other. I love both of their vocals. It's very rare that I have a band where both lead vocalists I like just as much. Usually I feel like one sort of steals the show, and I don't feel like either of them steal the show over the other. They're very beautifully blended together. They both get about equal airtime on the record, and the call and response style that they have, it almost feels like they're having a conversation with each other in a lot of songs, like Little Talks, for example, where they both have equal time in terms of singing. And then, of course, they harmonize beautifully with other members of the band. There's a good 5 of them at the time that this album was released. Now, if I'm not mistaken, there has been a change up in the band since the My Head is an Animal days. I believe one member did leave by the time My Head is an Animal came to full fruition. I'm not entirely sure about that, because there were 5 members for Beneath the Skin, but I remember reading that something changed. I'll need confirmation on that there might have been one member who changed out. Anyway, they put out this record, and it's sort of, the songwriting kind of takes, I think, center stage. For me, although I think the melodies are strong, I just think that Beneath the Skin is a little bit more about melody and a little bit more about emotional appeal. Not to say that My Head is an Animal is not a very emotional record. I'd say My Head is an Animal is a bit more of an abstract record, and I definitely think it leans a little bit more into like Mumford and Sons, Fleet Foxes territory, maybe even a little bit of Bon Iver in there. There's always a bit of that in all of their music, and Beneath the Skin has that too, trust me. But there's something about the guitar that Beneath the Skin has that is very different from those other bands. And then when you listen to My Head is an Animal, it's a lot less guitar and it's a lot more horns and trumpets. And tambourines, and is sort of a little bit more of a traditional folk acoustic set. There's no electric guitars, but there's acoustic guitars. And the acoustic guitar opening for Dirty Paws, the lead track off this album, is so inviting and come close by the fire, let me tell you a story. This album unfolds like a children's story. The lyrics are at once very childlike and at the same time very dark and very descriptive. So it basically paints a beautiful abstract picture of a story of what I envision like these kind of metaphorical creatures that stand in for the human, conscious, or for love, or for innocence and freedom or youth. They have all these endless imagery painted of creatures exploring the wilderness. And they talk a lot about how My Head is an Animal is about running through the forests and exploring the mountains and the wilderness. And it's very much an exploratory, celebratory record, whereas Beneath the Skin for them was much more about looking within themselves, like examining the heart and examining, the organs of the body, metaphorically, of course, more so, and introspectively looking within themselves. And My Head is an Animal is like, look at the world, it's so beautiful and frightening at the same time. And you feel that. And if you look at the music videos, the two iconic music videos from this era for Little Talks and for, not for Dirty Paws, there was a lyric video made, but not a music video, still with beautiful animation. But for King and Lionheart, they pull a lot from Norse mythology. They have a lot of Viking-influenced sculpture and these creatures that look very mythical. In the Little Talks music video, which I love, it shows Nana as this like mythical goddess figure, sort of leading the other members of the band through this very terrifying and adventure kind of filled terrain where they're fighting off all these monsters. And at the very end, Nana kind of controls this very, very scary monster. I get a lot of like Tibetan Buddhist influence going in there with the dragons and everything. And she actually like controls it and like turns into a force for good. It reminds me a lot, any Legend of Zelda fans out there, the Divine Beasts from Breath of the Wild, the newest installment in that franchise. It very much feels like Nana is one of the sages, or whatever they're called, the people who are controlling the divine beasts in Hyrule. And at the very end, she kind of finally takes over from the evil inside of the monster and claims it for good. It kind of feels like that. And I just had to make that comparison. King and Lionheart, on the other hand, is definitely, it removes the band. The band doesn't actually, I think, really feature in the video. And it's this woman and this boy, maybe brother and sister, and they're trying to get to each other, and the boy seems to be imprisoned, and at the very end he blasts off in this like very, the same time medieval but also very futuristic spaceship. It's very sad because it doesn't really have a happy ending, and I researched this and I was very interested to find out that Nana has a little brother who lives in Canada, who she doesn't see very often. She feels a little estranged from him, and she was inspired by that relationship to write this song, King and Lionheart. And so the visuals make so much more sense when you interpret it that way, as why the girl never actually got to the boy, even though she was fighting all these warriors and really making headway in terms of getting to the fortress where he was kept prisoner. There's two covers for this album. The Icelandic release features these very buff men standing in a line from like, it looks like a shot from like the 1920s or something. It's a very interesting album cover, and although I sort of can see how it fits to the record, adventure, or possibly, the title of the band, Of Monsters and Men, it talks about, the good and bad of humanity, humanity's proclivity to create, but also to destroy, so sort of that parable of man's weakness. There's a little bit of that biblical kind of undertone there. So I could see that as being about that archetype of like masculinity and how it can destroy and yet create. But I think that the US and international cover fits the ambiance of the record so much better, which is kind of odd because I would think that the Icelandic version would be a lot more like showing the Icelandic scenery, and that's what the US version has. It's this beautiful beach, and I'm not sure who it is in the cover, but it's not someone from the band. I think it's someone's relative or something that they shot, that they got to be on the album cover. And then it looks like there's this like house just like floating in the middle of the ocean. And it feels a lot more emblematic of the theme and story arc of the album. So I definitely prefer the international cover. So I talked about Dirty Paws. We actually say the line, "My head is an animal," in the lyrics of this song. Jumping up and down the floor, my head is an animal. And once there was an animal, it had a son that mowed the lawn. The son was an okay guy. I remember when I first heard this song, I always read it as the son was an old gay guy. And I was like, okay, these lyrics are oddly specific, so I'm not that thrown off by it. But it's no, he was an okay guy. They had a pet dragonfly. The dragonfly, it ran away, but it came back with a story to say. This is sort of like a prologue or a prelude sort of thing where it's like, once upon a time, and we're about to tell you about this weird, twisted, dark adventure fairy tale that you would read to children. And that's how so many of the lyrics come off in this album, and I love it. It's so Icelandic, it's so odd, and it's so mysterious at the same time. Her dirty paws and furry coat, she ran down the forest slope, the forest of talking trees. They used to sing about the birds and the bees, but we know what that means. The bees had declared a war. The sky wasn't big enough for them all. The birds, they got help from below, from dirty paws and the creatures of snow. Now, you know, bees are symbolized to be, you know, men, and the birds are women. The bees declared a war. There wasn't enough room for the bees and the birds to coexist peacefully. This is a metaphor for humanity itself. And so the birds, they got help from below, from dirty paws and the creatures of snow. So now we're analogizing or anthropomorphizing emotions as creatures. And that's what's done a lot in the case of this record. So Dirty Paws, it's a get right in, jump into the story kind of song. It leads you right into the action. So I've already talked about King and Lionheart. It's a beautiful folk-leaning track. It's not too like loud and percussive, but it's sort of just, it's not at the same time soft. It features beautiful vocals by Nana. Taking over this town, they should worry. But these problems aside, I think I taught you well. That we won't run, and we won't run. And in the winter night, sky ships are sailing, looking down on these bright blue city lights. And they won't wait. We're here to stay. Howling ghosts, they reappear in mountains that are stacked with fear. But you're a king and I'm a Lionheart. There's all of these barriers between us, but we are meant to be together. We are drawn to be together. It's a mournful song, and yet it's celebratory and triumphant at the same time. Mountain Sound is a beautiful song that I think symbolizes the theme of this record so well, not just in the lyrics, but in the soundscape of it. It's one of the most upbeat songs on this record. I hear them calling in the distance, so I packed my things and ran, far away from all the trouble I had caused with my two hands. Alone we traveled on with nothing but a shadow, we fled far away. Hold your horses now, we sleep until the sun goes down. Through the woods we ran, deep into the mountain sound. This is literally about how we took this adventure, how we ran into the wild. And we sleep until the sun goes down. So we're nocturnal, we're a little bit more primal, we're wild creatures. This has a true band sound. And I feel like it's, along with Little Talks, these are the two sort of band moments on this record where everyone is in the fray, even though Raggy is doing most of the vocals. And it does feel, because of that, a little bit more masculine. I would definitely say that Ragnar's not a masculine belter, but he definitely adds that masculine tinge to the sound, which brings that band sound. And then Nana usually tends to have a little bit more of that ethereal ambient stuff going on around her voice. Tends to be, at least, not so much on this album, definitely more so on Beneath the Skin. So they do kind of parse out the masculine and feminine energies that sort of intertwine in this group very beautifully. So Slow and Steady, I think I mentioned, was only released in the US. And it's a beautiful description for the sound of this song. If I had to pick two adjectives, slow and steady, is how the percussion and melody of this song plays itself out. It's a lot more sparsed out, it's a lot more ambient. You definitely feel like it's a vibe song. And it speaks about emotional control. The lights go out, I am all alone. All the trees outside are buried in the snow. I spend my night dancing with my own shadow, and it holds me and it never lets me go. I move slow and steady, but I feel like a waterfall. I move slow and steady past the ones that I used to know. There's some beautiful guitar solos towards the end. This song is very emotional, and it is very weighted. It's very like, oh, I feel tired now. And yet at the same time, I feel like I'm still moving. But it's like the tortoise and the hare. This is the tortoise. Mountain Sound was the hare rushing head first into the unknown. This song is like the complete opposite, which is kind of interesting that they're both next to each other on the record. From Thinner, This is a very abstract song on this record. At first, I wasn't that crazy about it. This song takes a little bit of time to get used to the melody and the little bit more shouty, folk-leaning aspects of this song. This definitely has a come to the campfire sort of feel, and I definitely think it reminds me a lot more of Mumford and Sons. It has a accordion sort of breakdown towards the end, so it feels, like I said, it feels very European. I don't know how else that's a good way to describe it, but it definitely feels like folk-leaning European because of the la 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 la's, and it gets very actually sounds a little bit Slavic to me, but yet this is Nordic music. So I think that there's that tie to like folklore really coming strong through this. I don't know what Finner is. Is it a person or is it a place? I can't really tell. We came here on his back and we caught your eye. The salty ocean wind made the seagulls cry. The rocking of his house had me holding on. There we bring up house again. There's always a description of a house in a different place, whether it's in the middle of the ocean, whether it's on a hill. This house that we live in, these creatures, I always envision them as, again, like a where the wild things are kind of creature living in this house. But I knew that I was safe from there on out. And the waves that hit his face marked the past, and the furrows on his skin, oh, how time goes fast. And we are far from home, but we're so happy. Far from home, all alone, but we're so happy. So I'm assuming Finner is a person because they do say after every sunny day came a stormy night. That's when Finner would say, keep your heads held high. They capitalize Finner. It's obviously a person. I think that might have some sort of Norse mythological context to it. That's my guess. Or, you know, it just could be someone they know. It definitely sounds like an Icelandic first name. So I'm not really sure. I'm not really coming up with any leads here doing some research on this. So please let me know if you know in the comments. Okay, so then we have Little Talks. I've already talked about this song is a beautiful celebratory band song. It features their trumpets. It features the band in all of their glory, just celebrating and talking about it's actually formed by describing a house that they stayed in. They're describing this old and creaky house. I don't like walking around this old and empty house, so hold my hand, I'll walk with you, my dear. The stairs creak as I sleep, it's keeping me awake. It's the house telling you to close your eyes. And some days I can't even dress myself, it's killing me to see you this way. 'Cause though the truth may vary, this ship will carry our bodies safe to shore. So once again, the house in the middle of the ocean that you see in the album cover. It's a metaphor for the heart and for exploration, I think, and for life's journey. And this house is unknown and it's unfamiliar and creepy, but it's guiding you along. You have to trust it. You have to surrender to it. And so, like I said, there's a very call and response. It definitely feels like we're listening to a conversation between Raggy and Nana, the two lead vocalists, discussing and reassuring themselves. You know, it's going to be okay. It's the house telling you to go to sleep. But I feel so scared, Nana says. It's going to be okay. And there's this beautiful, eerie, creaking, spaced out ambient middle, which I think really captured my ear when I first heard this song because it lets you know that there's more to the band than just these rough and tumble kind of alternative rock songs. There's a lot more ambient imbued in this band, and of course acoustic folk leanings. And again, it's one of the most pop songs on this record. This song went everywhere on the radio. And I know that of Monsters and Men, I remember they talked about it. They were like, why? They don't understand to this day why this song was so popular. I talk about it in my Beneath the Skin review as well. And I don't really get it either. It's a fun pop rock song and I get that. But I think it's because of Radio 104.5, if I'm not mistaken, from my hometown, Philly. They played it in 2011, and that's how it became an international success, or at least in the US it did. This was all over the radio. Okay, 6 Weeks is definitely one of the more rough and tumble rock songs on this record. It definitely is a more masculine song. Slow me down, her blood on my bones. Let go, lay to rest. We fall to the ground. Sleep, sleep all night. While they're young, they wait alone. So get up, shake the rust. We crawl on the ground. Alone, I fight these animals. Alone until I get home. So 6 Weeks is not actually ever mentioned in the lyrics of this song. So it's, to this day, one of the most confusing song titles for me. So apparently this song is inspired by this tale of, well, it's a true tale of an American frontiersman named Hugh Class, who was left for dead after being attacked by a bear. So he's considered one of the most badass guys in history. And they were sort of this song is kind of speaking about, like, it makes me think of the Revenant, like someone who's been beaten down by nature and is resilient and fighting back, tooth and claw. There's a lot of people interpreting it. 6 weeks can mean a lot of different things. Someone said it might be about the rape of Nanking when Japan spent 6 weeks murdering, raping, and causing chaos in China. That's a very dark parallel to draw, but, people have good cases for it. Using, again, anthropomorphizing the Japanese as animals, attacking China. So there's a lot of symbolism in all these songs and a lot of left up into interpretation. It's not my favorite song on the record, but it definitely gets the blood pumping. It is a shout it from the rooftops type song. So next we have a Love, Love, Love. This is the most innocent and cute and airy song on this record. It feels like a nice, just folk song. It's not like, it's just so innocent and sweet. I love the lyric, and those bright blue eyes can only meet mine across the room filled with people that are less important than you. I always thought that was so descriptive of how I always felt. Like when you see someone in a crowd and you're like, I don't care about anyone else. I just want you. And the only times that we can actually meet is when there's all this noise around us. It's bittersweet. So I feel like Nana really shows her innocent side here. This isn't vulnerable. This song is wearing your heart on your sleeve and not being ashamed of it. And it's very heartfelt and sincere because of it. A very shimmery moment on this record. Your Bones. This is a very melodic song. I feel like this is definitely like the prototype song for Wolves Without Teeth off of Beneath the Skin. I see these as brother songs. In the spring we made a boat, out of feathers, out of bones. We set fire to our homes, walking barefoot in the snow. Distant rhythm of the drum. As we drifted towards the storm, baby lion lost his teeth. Now they're swimming in the sea. Troubled spirits on my chest, where they laid to rest. The birds all left my tall friend, as your body hit the sand. Million stars up in the sky formed a tiger's eye that looked down on my face, out of time and out of space. The most enigmatic lyrics. So beautiful, so descriptive, so fairy tale. And I definitely find the melody and propulsion of this song to carry you in a direction. It's a good song to dance to. It's got that sweeping melodic melody that just captures you, and it really draws you in, so it's a highlight song for me for sure. Though it does have those repetitive la la la's, I don't mind it so much as from Thinner it gets a little cheesy. This feels just like exclamatory. And hold on to what we are, hold on to your heart. They say this in the most earnest and like kind of dire manner. It's like, we really mean this. The shit's about to go down. Hold on to your heart, because the seas are about to get really rough, and you need to have this house built nice and sturdy if you're going to survive. Sloom. Oh boy, this song is such an earworm. This is, again, another more kind of outdoorsy, acoustic leaning song. It feels very earthy. Probably the most beautiful melody on this album. And because of that, Sloom is my favorite song on this record. Now, I don't really know what Sloom means. Is that an Icelandic word? I'm not finding anything about what Sloom means. So again, please, anyone help me out. This is a very sincere plea kind of song. It's speaking to someone else that you care deeply about, possibly a parent or a loved one. The sea said goodbye to the shore so the sun wouldn't notice. The seaweed that wrapped its arms around you. No one describes nature in such poetic, anthropomorphized ways like of Monsters and Men with their lyrics. I mean, it is so spiritually rewarding, these lyrics, when, they imbue nature into them so strongly. The carpet on my cheeks feels like the fall grass, and I run through the tall trees with your hands chasing me. This song literally feels like a summer day running through a birch forest. The books that I keep by my bags are full of your stories that I drew up from a little dream of mine, a little nightmare of yours. To be asked to take this plunge, to forgive and forget, and be the better man. So love me, mother, and love me, Father, and love my sister as well. They also sing and love my brother as well later on. So there's both, everyone's tied together. I love the end. It just says, I met a man today and he smiled back at me. Now there are thoughts like these that keep me on my feet. You know, it's just like, and I found positivity today in the most unlikely place. And so this song is aching for love from parents who aren't giving it to them. And they describe at the very end how they found love from a stranger much more easily than they did from their own parents. And it's a truly tragic thing. So I'm sure this song is inspired by forlorn, you know, children who are not listened to or ignored by their parents and are just aching to be loved and to be held like they are by other people they've known out in this concrete jungle, as they describe, with streetlights hanging their heads. She describes the city and the hustle and bustle of it. So poetic, so beautiful, so crisp and clean in the delivery and the production and the airiness. Love this song. Lake House is very similar to Sloom, so I often would get them at the beginning. I'd get them mixed up as like I couldn't remember which melody belonged to which song. The melody is not as strong for Lake House, but it still has, again, it feels a little bit like Sloom Revisited, and because Sloom is such a strong song, I find Lake House to not be quite as rewarding, just because Sloom does it better and other songs earlier in the record. But again, now they're literally describing the lake house, which is something we've been coming back to over and over again. And they talk about sleeping all day. And so it's a little bit more like rehashing, you know, this anthem for us, or these wild creatures that we are. Okay, I really want to talk about Yellow Light. This song was one of the first songs I heard after Little Talks, before the album came out, and this was the song that basically sold me to this band. This isn't the only song they have where they use crescendo to its full effect, and they tease you with layering and layering of sounds until you get a very beautiful, harmonized instrumental that fades out at the very end. This song is very mystical, it's very escapist, it's very ambient and ethereal. I'm looking for a place to start, and everything feels so different now. Just grab a hold of my hand. I will lead you through this wonderland. Water up to my knees, sharks are swimming in the sea. Just follow my yellow light and ignore all those big warning signs. And then we have that beautiful chime-led melody that just carries the melody line and grows and grows and grows. Somewhere deep in the dark, a howling beast hears us talk. I dare you to close your eyes and see all the colors in disguise. Running into the night, the earth is shaking and I see a light. The light is blinding my eyes as the soft walls eat us alive. There's an emphasis of surrender to this enigmatic reality around us. And it's the most escapist song. It's the most fantastical and ethereal in its lyrics and in its sound. It's describing all at once everything and nothing at the same time. So you're left with just all of these poetic phrases that sound beautiful but possibly don't make any sense. And it's all of these things coming together, and it feels transcendent because of it. A beautiful, understated, slow burner kind of song, and I love these slow burners because you have to really sit with it. And it fades out the album beautifully. Now, there is a little bonus track at the end called Numb Bears, which again is very Little Talks, very From Thinner. It's a celebratory, classic indie alternative rock folk song. I feel like it's just like Winter Sound on Beneath the Skin. It's not my cup of tea, but it's still really cute and fun. What the heck does a numb bear mean? A bear is numb? I have no idea, but it's cute, and I don't find it weird because I just expect kind of weird lyrics from them that are very oddly specific and, like I said, at the same time so deeply poetic. And so this song feels like a nice sort of like, we're already here. There's sort of just like celebrating the moment. And it's bringing you back a little bit because the yellow light like had you spaced out and daydreaming. And this is sort of a like, hey, but back in the present moment, like let's sing and celebrate around the campfire, and ends the album on a really positive note, which I think is perfect because this is a very positive album. So overall, I find this to be a very welcoming listen, especially for the springtime. Because there's just this feeling in the air that's very warm about it. And I definitely recommend it to anyone who likes like alternative rock. I'm sure a lot of people are familiar with this band, but they're still kind of slept on, which is a real shame. I'm really excited for their third studio album. It's probably gonna come out within like a year from now sometime. So I'm really excited for when that actually does happen. They've been in the studio for quite a bit. Like I said, I have reviewed Beneath the Skin. Very different album, and I do like Beneath the Skin a little bit more, but Beneath the Skin is a little more depressing at the same time, so it depends what kind of mood you're in. Beneath the Skin is a little bit more of a winter album, and My Head is an Animal is a little bit more of a summer album. But they are both great for different moods, and I'd be interested to see where they go from these two kind of polar opposite kind of albums that are still unified through this very poetic, childlike fairy tale description of reality, and very clever, smart lyrics describing humanity and lessons we learn from the things that we do. And of course, their classic band sound. So please let me know if you enjoyed this review. Please let me know what you think about this record, any insights you have, any info, and please give this a like and subscribe if you enjoyed. And like I said, check out my Beneath the Skin review. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you all have a blessed day. Peace, love, and light. Bye.
She said goodbye to the shore, so the sun wouldn't notice the seaweed there wrapped its arms around you.